Welcome back. This is Todd Sylvester with the Todd Sylvester Inspires Belief Cast. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you to Veracity Networks and my good friend Drew Peterson for sponsoring the show. I couldn't do it without you guys, so thank you so much. I also like to thank Paul Cardall for this beautiful music that he allows me to play on the beginning and the end of this Belief Cast. And he's an amazing guy. He's been on twice, and he's just a good dude. And I want to thank all of you listeners. Thank you for always tuning in every week and sharing this with people you know. We are growing like crazy, and it wouldn't be possible without you. And I would also like to thank all of our previous guests. They're amazing people, and because of that, we have just grown like crazy. And today's no different. We have an amazing person today. His name's Michael Gregson. Thank you for joining us, Michael.
Yeah, thanks for letting me be here, Todd. I'm excited to be with you today.
Yeah, thank you. And I cannot wait for our listeners to hear your story. It is incredible, and you've been through so much and overcome so much, and I can't wait for people to hear this. A little background. You grew up in Salt Lake City. You're married currently to Ashley, and you have 3 children.
Alicia.
Oh, Alicia.
And
I'm so sorry.
No worries.
Man, we might have to edit that out.
No worries. It's she would laugh at that anyway. She's phenomenal. So
yeah, no, in beautiful family. Professionally, you've worked 12 years in the hospitality industry for Marriott International, and his current role is with the Provo Marriott Hotel and Conference Center. He has a passion for helping people and to choose a career that would allow him to serve people all day, every day, while providing for his family. You've been recently speaking to church groups, addiction recovery centers, and business settings for the past 9 years. In 2017, the Mormon Channel produced a short video about your experiences titled Returning to Prayer that highlights your recovery from addiction and his rescue from suicide as he prayed in desperation and anger to God. And I'm excited to hear this story. And you started a podcast called Come Towards Delight. You just every day you're trying to help other people and make a difference. And so, I mean, the list goes on and on. We could keep going, but thank you for joining us and being willing to come share your amazing story with us today.
Yeah, thanks so much, Todd. I'm excited to be here with you. And just coming into your office right now, I think, and you and I talked a little bit before recording, but that word delight means a lot to me. And I look up at your ceiling and you have a quote that says, "The most delightful surprise in life is to suddenly recognize there is nothing wrong with you."
Yeah.
And amen to that. And I think to anybody out there listening to my story is, it's crazy. It's tragic. You know, you've had some others on the podcast that have gone through some crazier things than me. And we all have a story.
Yeah.
And mine's no more important than anybody else's. But the beauty is we go through what we need to go through that gives us the opportunity to recognize how important we are and how much worth and value we have, and that there is somebody much greater than us that we can rely on. And that's our Heavenly Father. That's God.
Yeah.
And once we come to that point, then we get a lot of help.
Right.
And he opens the door for us in our lives.
Yeah.
So excited to be here, Todd. Thank you so much. I love what you do.
Thank you. And I'm already feeling this really strong energy and love and light and spirit in here today. So thank you. And so why don't we start with, before we get into the meat of your story, tell us a little bit about where you grew up and about your family.
Sure. So come from a family of 8 total. So 6 kids in my family. I was the second oldest. I have an older brother.
Okay.
And then 4 younger sisters. And my mother and my father. Growing up, I grew up in Utah for the most part. My grandpa, Gregson, was a part owner in an oil industry, and so my dad and his brothers would go around the country and kind of open up gas stations. It was called Cowboy Oil back in the day. This is like early 80s,
right?
Where mom and pop gas stations actually did exist. They don't anymore.
I know.
Yeah, it's gone now. But so in my childhood, we lived in we lived in Oklahoma for a bit, Enid, Oklahoma, holy podunk town.
Uh-huh.
And then we moved to Minnesota and Wisconsin for a while, where I became a huge fan of Kirby Puckett. Guy's amazing.
Kirby Puckett, that brings back some memories.
Yep.
I remember watching him, he was the man.
Yeah, he was short, and he'd always jump up and catch the ball before it would go over the fence.
He was amazing.
And he's gone now, rest his soul, but good man. Anyway, and then as I got into the later years of my youth, we moved back to Utah to be surrounded by family, and I loved that. I loved growing up. My both grandparents, I grew up in the same neighborhood as them and surrounded by cousins for the most part of my life. But just had a great childhood, very strong, faithful Christian family. We belonged to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and grew up with an understanding of who I am, why I'm here on earth, and the purpose that that we can live with. But sometimes growing up in that, it keeps it out of your brain of thinking that you need to uncover and discover new things and actually really reach to find out the answers to some of those questions in life that are very important.
Right. Yeah. So what was your childhood like with having that many siblings? I would imagine that was kind of fun and probably chaotic at times.
Yeah, I didn't know anything different. I mean, our family reunions were massive. So my mom had 7 siblings, total of 8 kids in her family. And then my dad had a total of 7 in his family. And so we get to our family reunions, and I'm watching my mom and dad go around and hugging up and loving on everybody. But then, like, every once in a while they'd see somebody and be like, "Now remind me which family you're in," and so it's so massive. And you grow up in a family that's a large size, and it's interesting. And I grew up in Holiday, Utah. I went to high school Skyline, and I felt like I was the poor kid in school, right? I mean, when you grow up in a family that's a good sized family, no matter how hard your parents work, when you're young and you're still developing, you just kind of feel like, man, we don't really have all the stuff that some of these other people have, and you start to compare. And unfortunately, comparison, what do they call it? They say it's the thief of joy.
Yeah,
and as you start to get into those teenage years, and you really start to compare yourself to others. You start to learn competition, you learn all those things, and you try and be the best you can. But of course, you're going to look at those people across the aisle and start to compare. And that was something that I really struggled with in my youth as I started to grow and develop.
Yeah, and I think most kids, go through that period in their time, in their life, some worse than others. But I think we get to that point where, am I enough? We start walking around going, I don't think I'm as good as everyone else.
Yeah.
And we beat ourselves up internally, right? And we go through a difficult time. Obviously you've been through a lot, and, and there's a big part of this story I want our listeners to hear. If we could, let's maybe kind of lead up to what, when you started really struggling in your life, addiction got into it, a faith crisis, the whole thing. I just maybe kind of start that with us and
absolutely
where that went. Sorry.
Well, so Todd, I just celebrated my 40th birthday in November, and I'm going to start there and then backtrack. So for my 40th birthday, a couple years ago, I mentioned to my wife, these NBA players, when they get around 40 years old, they retire, and what a glorious thing for these guys, after a lifelong time of working their butts off to make it as far as I have. And I said, although I didn't make it to the NBA, I've had a dream to play in the NBA for a long time, and that dream is real to me. So I want to retire from my NBA dream at 40 years old. So my wife threw me a party on my 40th birthday where she rented out a movie theater, and she actually had a press conference. I walk in, and I'm like, oh, cool, my whole family and friends are here to watch a movie with me. This is great.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, I've got this guy named Spencer Hall, who's the starter of Salt City Hoops, and he used to work for ESPN, and he grabs me and he goes, "We've got some questions for you." And he's dressed up head to toe and to the nines, and he's got this podium at the front, and he's like, "We've got some questions for you." And all of a sudden I go, "Holy cow. This is a press conference." And he goes, "Yeah, we would like to talk to you about your career and your dream of pulling on the NBA. Way. And behind me is a sign that my wife had created with an upside down Nike swoosh that said, "Just couldn't do it." So yeah. So that said,
that's awesome.
That goes back to a lifelong dream of playing in the NBA.
Sure,
and 5'10", that couldn't jump higher than about maybe at peak, maybe about 18, 19, 20, I don't know, whatever. But when I was a child, that was very real to me. I was athletic. I love sports. All the things that a lot of young men, young women do is we love to use our bodies and play, and we're active. And I had a talent for basketball, and I loved it so much. And school came naturally to me up until about junior high age, and I made it through no problem. And I played, and I was one of the better players on the basketball team there. And as I got into high school, I I had some girlfriends in junior high. I had one specifically that, I didn't really understand. Young youth and young love is so weird.
Right.
It's, you go through so much, and you put your heart out there, and it gets crushed, and we all go through it, male or female. It's weird.
Yeah.
But I kind of had that experience from ninth grade going into my high school time frame. And so as I was coming into high school, I was kind of depressed a little bit because it didn't work out with this girl that I kind of had a crush on, and I was trying really hard to find myself. I was having some struggles with my friends, a couple cousins that I was really close to and lived really close to as well, and just my self-esteem was really not in a good place. I was relying so much on outward things to give me an inward value. Instead of recognizing in me the good things, I started really highlighting, well, I am these failures. I don't have all the money in the world. I don't have, this is what I don't have. But I forgot about all these things that I was good at and these things that I loved.
Yeah.
And so anyway, going into high school, really started to struggle with my grades right off the bat. Tryouts come sophomore year. The basketball coach, Charlie Wadding, awesome guy.
I know Charlie.
Yeah, he's a stud. And I played college ball at the U, and then he played professionally, and actually told me a funny story about Larry Bird, and we'll talk about that off mic. But he was my first period teacher, and I went to tryouts. I learned in high school that I could slough and get away with it, and then show up to class the next day, and teachers wouldn't even notice, right? Fun. And so I started to go hang out with friends that I thought I could. You kind of surround yourself by the light in which you live. So I started to go spend time with other kids that would slough class and things like that, because it somehow made me feel better and made me feel like, I don't have a lot of value that I'm bringing, and I'm spending time with others that don't either. And so we're just kind of sulking together, and we're going out and doing things that aren't very productive. Right. And so I went the first day of tryouts, sophomore year, which in Utah is the first year of high school. And that day after the first the next day after the first day of tryouts, I got my report card and said 1.8. Well, you can't play ball without at least a 2.0. 2.0 is like just bare minimum to get on. Yeah. I'd never had that happen in my whole life before. And I was like, what the heck happened? And instead of going to tryouts the next day, I didn't go, and I quit. I literally quit. And I was one of the better basketball players in my high school. Yeah. And the next day, I'll never forget it. After I missed that tryout, Charlie came to me in the morning. He pulled me out in the hall and he said, "What are you doing?" Yeah, why didn't you? Yeah. What are you doing? And I had a moment right there to make a choice, because I know that if I would have said to him, I want to try. I'm so sorry. I made a mistake. He would have opened the door for me to help me, but I didn't. I didn't take that. And I'd already, in my mind, I'd already quit. I already made the choice in my mind that I was done. There was no opportunity for me. And that, to Todd, really put a pinpoint on who I was in high school. That's who I became, is this guy that failed because I quit, and I kind of blamed a lot of other things. Like I struggled with ADHD, and depression. All of a sudden I had to start going to counseling because my parents looked at me and they were like, "What's wrong with this guy?" Not this guy, but our son that we love dearly. Sure, yeah. You look in his eyes now, and all of a sudden we used to see this happy guy that was cheerful and engaged and loved life, or at least like loved to, be alive, whatever. All of a sudden we've got this kid that like won't look us in the eyes anymore. He wakes up in the morning, he eats a bowl of cereal, and he won't look up. He doesn't want to engage with anybody. Wow. And there was a lot of darkness there. And it got to the point where my grades struggled so much that about towards the end of my junior year, I got my report card and it said 0.8. I mean, you really have to work hard to get a 0.8. Right. You got to put in as much effort as you do to get a 4.0. And I know that now, but then I was like, I'm just a failure. Like in my mind. It became your belief system. Yep. Yeah, that was just who you were at this point. Yep. And wow. And I had friends. I still had friends. I still had all these things, but I just started living a lie. I didn't have to tell people about my grades, to go to parties and have fun and this kind of stuff. So on the weekends, that's all I look forward to, is trying to go connect that way. But inside, I just was falling apart. There was nothing in me that was giving me value, and it was dark for me. So when I was alone or by myself or disengaged from whatever was happening, I felt like, what is wrong with me? Nobody wants to hang out with me. Nobody wants to spend time with me. Just beating myself up. And that's the only self-talk that I had in my brain at that time.
Right.
It was really hard.
Wow. Man, I can definitely relate with that negative voice in our head that tells us we're no good, we're different, so we can't connect. My problems are too big. I'll never be able to get past this. And I think, that leads to a lot of other things, because I know what I do with my clients is belief dictates the way we behave, right? So having that really strong belief that you're just the guy that fails and this and that, what other behaviors did this lead you into, and what road did that take you down?
Great. So, I love your thoughts, and obviously you know so much about this realm, and so many of us go through this, right? We kind of have to.
You're right. Yeah.
But because of those beliefs, all of a sudden I started looking for what's going to make me happy right now, right? I want instant gratification, because nothing's giving me that. And I came from a family that was very active, LDS, very active in our faith. My grandpa was a mission president in my high school years, and then very shortly thereafter, he was called into the quorum, what we call the quorum of the 70. And so his leadership was high up in the church. His life was a life of service and dedication. And so my whole family kind of looked to him as like, well, that's the example of the life that we need to live. Yeah. And here I am, his second oldest grandchild, a male. I've got to go on a mission, like not got to, but like I should. That's the expectation for me. So there was a lot of expectations that were set for me because of this thing, but also in my brain, my expectations were even higher than that of what I thought everybody else wanted from me.
A lot of
and
pressure.
Here I am, right? Pressure. And here I am failing. And those expectations are not real. They're not true. And there is no expectation. Our parents are happy when we are just happy and trying the best we can to be good, productive people. So the beliefs I had, like you said, caused me to really look for instant gratification. I want something that's going to make me feel good, make me feel valued now.
Right.
And as I got into those teenage years, I started to, surrounding myself with these people that kind of had the same amount of light that I did. I started getting into partying. I started drinking. I started smoking marijuana. Masturbation became a big thing. And obviously, things like that that word is such a dark word in our society. It's like we can't say it. And if we do, then we're a perverted person in a way.
Right.
Not true. Everybody goes through, certain things, and a lot of us experience these things. But the amount of shame that entered into my life that nobody knew about was heavy. And that caused me to just shy away from so much and disengage, and you go into this small place, and you don't want to connect with anybody except for people that have the same amount of light as you. And even with those people in your brain, you want them to reach out to you because you want to feel like they like you. You want to feel like they care about you. You need somebody to give that to you, and you don't get it. And it's just a dark place to be in.
Wow, that's interesting and very well said. How we kind of attract to the same level of light, or like attracts like, right? Healthy attracts healthy, unhealthy attracts unhealthy, and that was a good way to say that. And so now you're trying, not that they're bad people, because you weren't a bad person.
No,
but it's just the level of mindset and belief system that you're on, and you feel more comfortable around the same type of mindset. Right.
Amen. Yeah, that's it. You really do. And like you said, there's nothing wrong with that. But when you're in your youth, we're here on earth to make mistakes. We have to. That's how we learn.
Right.
But when we surround ourselves with other people who are making mistakes that are just trying to hide away from those things, we feed off each other, and it's not helpful. But we're all kind of in it together, right?
Yeah, for sure. Wow. So now you're trying to find yourself, you're trying to fit in, you're trying to connect with certain people. Again, your family's realizing at this point that you're having a rough time.
very
Right.
much so.
And are you sharing with them at all what's going on? Or
No.
are you just like, I don't want to talk, leave me alone kind of thing?
No, I won't share anything with them. In fact, I won't even share the Nintendo paddle. I want to play. I want to go. Just
Right,
leave me alone.
just
Yeah,
leave me
I'm
alone.
good. I'm good. I'm good.
Yeah.
Leave me alone. No. An experience happened to me towards the end of my junior year. So when you grow up LDS, obviously for a young man, the expectation is to go on a mission, serve a mission. That's ultimately kind of what we grow up to do. We don't really look beyond that mark a lot of times in our lives.
Yeah.
Some of us anyway. And so anyway, I got into my junior year. I'm partying. I'm trying. I've got a couple friends that I've really become close to, and we're all partying together, that type of thing. But I am so unhappy, and I'm so broken, and I'm so depressed because I'm trying to figure out like if there's anything for me, since I'm not going to probably make the NBA at this point in my life. I'm sitting in my living room one day, totally depressed. I've been put on these medications for depression and ADHD. I won't take them. I'm telling my mom and my dad that I will, but I won't.
Right.
I feel like I'm a failure because I'm going to see a counselor now who's asking me what kind of animal would I be if I could be an animal and why. Right? I just didn't like. All I see in myself is there are problems. Why are all my friends successful and productive? They're on the football team. Scotland's had a championship team for 4 years in a row. What the heck's wrong with me? I quit.
Yeah.
I quit everything. I'm sulking on the sofa in my living room, head in hands, feeling like the biggest, worst failure in the world, and nobody cares anything for me because I've got nothing. I've got nothing.
Yeah.
My dad walked into the home after work that day, and he stopped. He kind of walked into our living room, and to get to his room, he's got to pass through, and he sees me. And typically, my dad was the kind of guy that always had joy. And he would always come home and say, "Hey, how are you? How's your day? Tell me about it. Like, what happened?" Didn't say a word to me this day. And he just kind of stood there for a second. I wasn't really looking up to see where he was to say hi. I was sulking, but I heard him. He stopped. And for a second, he just kind of stood there, and then he turned around and he went the other direction. I didn't think anything of it. I just kind of thought, hey. A few minutes later, he walked upstairs and he came walking towards me, and in his hands he had the Book of Mormon. In the Book of Mormon, if you're not LDS or of our faith, it's another testament of Jesus Christ. It's to go hand in hand with the Bible to testify of Christ.
Yeah.
Anyway, he had this Book of Mormon, and he came walking towards me, and with all the love and tenderness of his heart, he said, "Mike, I think it's time for you to read this book." And he put it down in front of me. And Todd, I grew up in this home where we tried to read every day together as a family.
Yeah.
We tried to make God the focus of our home and our life so that we could have that structure. But I'd never I've never read it. I'd never discovered, I'd never uncovered anything myself in that regard. So I sat there and I looked at it and I thought, I hate to read. I don't want to read it. You know, I just got done reading one book in my whole life, and I think it was Michael Jordan versus Magic Johnson, but I don't want to read anything about any of this other stuff. And as I sat there on the couch and thought, nah, I didn't really worry about it. Thanks, Dad. He went walking off. I had this feeling in my heart. Go read the book. And I at first I kind of laughed, no.
Right. Yeah.
And I thought that was my thinking. I'm like, yeah, well, it's a
Right.
stupid thought, Mike. Came back, and it was peace. Go read the book. And so I picked it up and I went downstairs in my room and I sat on my bed, and with all this depression surrounding me, I thought to myself, well, I've got to figure out if I'm going to go on a mission or not. And if I'm not going to go, I got to be able to say, I don't believe this. I don't feel right about it, and stand my ground.
Right.
And so I set the book on my bed. I knelt down and said a prayer, and I'd never really prayed with intent in my whole life. I'd said the prayers, but I'd never actually sincerely meant it.
Right.
This time I did. And I my prayer basically went, God, if you're there, I need your help. I want to know if this is true. If this is true, I'm going to read it. And if it's true, please, I just ask that you'll let me know that it is.
Right.
If it's not, let me know that it's not. I just want to know if it's true. And I said, I'll make you a promise that if you tell me this thing is true, I will go on a mission and I will give everything that I have. But I have to know it's true or else I'm not going to go.
Yeah.
So from that day going forward, I started to read the book. And my parents, looking back on this time, they kind of talk about it like this, like a light switch flipped on. All of a sudden, I started engaging people. I started looking people in the eyes. I started smiling again. I was happy again. I went from 0.8 grade in report card in high school, to high honor roll, and actually passing high school, barely by the skin of my teeth, but summer school, all the things. And I was engaging, I was loving, and I was lifting. I was trying to find friends whose heads were hanging down and trying to help them throughout the day. And when I finished reading, and it came down to that point where I needed to find out, I'll never forget the day, but I was down in my room and I knelt down on my knees. And as I went to ask, I already knew the answer, that God was real, this was true, and this brought light into my life. And the feelings that I felt then really it gave me so much gratitude for my life. And I decided at that point to go on a mission. So I graduated high school, all good there. Went on a mission, went to Indiana, and just gave everything I had. So I had nothing but failures up this point, right? And I didn't even look at the turnaround and the high honor roll as like a success. I just thought, finally, I'm back to the point where I should be, right? Yeah. But I haven't had great success in my life yet.
Right, yeah.
So I go on this mission, and I am just ready. I am on fire. And for 2 years, I keep that fire because I am not there for me. I am there for God, who has brought light back into my life. And so I'm out serving, dedicating every day because of gratitude and because of Jesus Christ. And it just lit my soul on fire. And for 2 years, that's how I lived. I saw miracles every day. I saw God's hand every day, changing not only my life, but people around me's life, and powerful stuff.
Yeah.
And as I get done with 2 years, all of a sudden, and leadership roles in that area, the confidence was there. I felt like I could talk to anybody and everybody. I was on Purdue campus, a school full of engineers, and I'm out stopping groups of people in between class to talk to them about God, and I'm getting people's attention. They'll stop and talk to me. I never found Drew Brees. I tried really hard.
Oh, yeah.
He's a great guy.
That would have been good.
Yeah. But anyway, at the end of 2 years, my parents came to pick me up, and you could see in their eyes, holy cow, what's happened to our son? And for about 4 days, we traveled on my mission. I had a full box of Book of Mormons, and I'm every time we stop for gas, I'm talking to everybody. When we're in the airport, I'm talking to everybody. I learned to love people and find the value of the worth of a soul. But on the flight home, I'm sitting there with my mom, and I just start weeping. And my mom turns to me and says, "What's wrong?" And I said, "I feel like I'm dying. I don't want this to end. I want to do this forever. I have so much joy doing this." And she scratches my back, but I had confidence. I felt ready, right? So I came home, and I started going to school at LDS Business College with a couple of my really close friends who are very successful and smart. Mm-hmm. And what happened to me is, although I had better studying habits, as I started going to school, I started to realize, because of all the class that I missed and the sloughing and this, that, and the other, I was far behind, especially in math. And so all of a sudden, my confidence started to drop as I started to go and engage in school. And I saw all these other kids around me being very successful. And I felt, looking outward, you feel like the grass is always greener. And these kids are so smart. They know everything. And why am I so far behind? And so that depression started to settle in just a little bit. It wasn't bad. I was still engaged with God. I was still reading scriptures. I was still praying every day.
Doing your part.
And engaged. I was trying to serve. But the habits started to change. I wasn't connecting as much. As I started to get this depression, I kind of started to go inward a little bit more and stopped serving as much. Well, I started dating, and I was working. I was trying to go to school for 20 hours a semester and work for 30 hours a week, and I just was throwing myself so thin into so many different things, and I wasn't stopping to collect myself and really make sure that I was taking care of me, and all at the same time trying to make the NBA somehow, right? I still believed in the dream, right? But anyway, I ended up, as I was dating, I ended up getting married in the temple, which we believe is for time and all eternity. A huge point for LDS people, right? This is the pinnacle. You get married, you believe in the temple, and you're sealed for time and all eternity. This is a huge thing. And very shortly thereafter, there were some red flags that I ignored as we were dating, and I'm sure she did the same for me. And I just spiritually wasn't in a good place, and I had stopped reading every day. I had stopped praying. I'd stopped doing all these things because I felt like I was good with God. I felt like I was connected to Him, and I'd seen all these miracles happen in my life. But shortly after we got married, after the honeymoon phase, literally within 1 month, we started arguing and fighting, and those arguments and fights got to the point where we literally yelling and screaming, and she actually started to hit me, and that hurt so much.
Sure.
It didn't hurt physically, it didn't, not at all, but it really hurt. And there was one time I was walking away, and she was hitting me in the back of the head, and I was like, I don't know what I've done to deserve this, but I must not be a good person. Like I kind of took everything and made it my fault. And
kind of going back to that not original, but the mindset you had and belief in high school. Like I must not be good enough.
Amen. That's
wow.
It was all me.
Yeah.
And I had a lot of bitterness. And those moments, those experiences put me in a place where I was just like, okay, I'm kind of done with this. Like I don't like any life in general. Just for some reason, I'm not okay. I'm not capable to have a good life. It's not working for me. And as we started going through the divorce process, we did, and I had a cousin reach out to me that was down in Arizona, and my father, who was my best friend, was kind of aware of where I was. And he knew that I was really slipping spiritually. And this cousin reached out to my dad and said, hey, what would he think if I asked him to come down and work for me in my electric company? And my dad said, I think it'd be a good thing. And so I did. I moved to Arizona to get a fresh start. Started working for my cousin. Was really hurt, wounded big time. I tried really hard, though, when I first got down there. I tried to engage, go to church, things like that. Felt good energy. Right. But then as I would come home and I realized I didn't really have any close friends, I didn't feel a lot of value for myself, felt very secluded. Wasn't really trying, though. That's the thing, is I wasn't making the choice to put myself in those places where I could have friendships and have people that would buoy me up. Right. I'd go sit in self-isolated seclusion, and that's a dark place. If you're not connecting with God, you're in a dark place. And anyway, I started drinking again. And once I took that first drink, in my mind, it kind of opened up that, okay, well, I've sinned once, a big sin here. So I'm good. I've got to repent for that. So I'm going to go ahead and do all these other things in my life. And yeah, I'm just going to keep it going. And so started drinking. It was self-isolation. I wasn't drinking with anybody else. I'd come home, grab a bottle, go sit in my room and drink. And then I connected with another buddy that was of the same faith as me, who had gone through divorce. A lot of fun, and we decided to go party. And we were living in Arizona. Scottsdale, Arizona is like a mini LA. There's clubs all over the place. Yeah. A lot of money, fast cars, whatever. That's the life, right? Flashy lights. And Todd, what's interesting about that is sometimes when we don't do that, we look at, as an outside person looking in, we go, why would somebody choose to live that life? It's fake. And that may be true to a certain extent, but at first, it's fun. It's exciting. Yeah. It's thrilling. It gives you adrenaline. There's a reason people are addicts and alcoholics and drug addicts, because at first it's exciting, it's new, and it does give you that instant gratification. It's not the right type of gratification, but adrenaline, if you've ever felt it, is very gratifying.
For sure.
And we tend to go towards those things that are very simple, that don't take a lot of effort on our part.
Right.
To feel that way. And for me to feel that, I had to take a few drinks. All of a sudden, Mike Gregson could let loose, and he was an amazing dancer on the dance floor. It was a blast. And so every night of the week, me and this buddy, we'd go to the clubs in LA. We'd start partying, start dancing. And it was a fun, exciting life at first. It didn't do anything to help me. That's for sure.
Right.
But it gave me a chance to break away from myself. And that's what I was looking for at that moment. Fast forward a little bit. I'd stopped going to church. I'd stopped engaging. I hadn't prayed for a long time. I hadn't read my scriptures. I knew God lived. I knew that. But I really tried to take God, put him in a box and put him in a closet and just for this time in my life, put them away and say, I can come back when I'm ready. I'll come engage when I'm ready. But right now, this is the life that I want. And so again, fast forward a few years later, we're talking about 3 years down the road. All of a sudden, it's not as easy anymore. I've got to drink a lot more. I've got to smoke a lot more marijuana.
Yeah.
I'm now taking it to work as well. And I'm working my job, but trying to break away every now and then and go have a sip of alcohol or take a puff of marijuana, because I'm a better person when I have this in my system. People like me a lot more. Life's a lot more exciting and fun. And I know how to talk to people really well when I've got this stuff. I'm a better salesman, if you will, right?
Sure.
Yeah, well, I was a better salesman to myself, believing that thought, right? The belief. It's all about your mindset.
Yeah.
And I really held on to that. Well, going down the road a little bit, I got a DUI coming back from the club one night, and that all of a sudden put the brakes on to a screeching halt. But I didn't want to face the music. I didn't want to face the choices that I created in my life. So I got this DUI. And here I am riding my car is impounded. My license is taken away. I've got to spend some time in jail. Holy cow. If your self-esteem's low, it goes even lower at that point.
Yeah,
and the partying's not as exciting as it used to be. It starts to become dark for me. I'm now riding my bike from Gilbert, Arizona to Scottsdale to my job every day. So I'm leaving like 2 hours early, going 100 miles an hour, getting to work, changing, and I'm sweating like a beast because Arizona's not cold.
For sure.
It's crazy. And in my brain, I'm like, the whole ride there, I'm like, my life is so messed up. Like, I'm never going to, like, I thought it ended to a certain extent. I felt like I would never get back to the exciting life that I was living when I was, driving, and we were going to the clubs, and I felt like I was pretty cool and whatever.
Right, yeah.
And I had all these friends, these people that I thought had come into my life that were really my great friends. That wasn't true. You kind of burn through people a lot when you're living a party lifestyle, especially females. And I'm not like dating. I don't have any substance there in that as well. So that part of my life, as far as having a family and a future that way, is not existent. So I'm riding my bike, sulking, and just feeling so down and depressed, and like life is awful.
Right.
Well, I'm at work one day and I get a phone call from my dad, who's my best friend and my hero, and the one person who, through all the stuff, excitement, darkness, depression, would call me and without judgment love me and listen to me and not shame me. He knew what I was doing.
Right.
But he would just talk positively to me, and he would talk about how much he loved me and how much he missed me, and just, I love you, bud. I hope you're doing good. I think about you all the time, and I think about the great missionary that you were. He knew my heart was so attached to that, and he'd talk about that, and he was always there. Well, here's this man calling me now, my best friend, the only one that's really trying to show up for me through everything.
Right.
And he says, son, I've got to talk to you. And I'm, what's wrong, Dad? And I stand up and I walk outside, and he says, I've been having headaches for about 2.5 weeks straight. I don't know what's going on. Me and your mom are going and getting testing, and we found out that there's a lump in my brain. We don't know what's happening, though. We don't know what it is, but I just wanted you to know everything's going to be just fine. You know, that parent thing that we say, where we're like, hey, kids, don't worry. It's all good, but Dad's got some big problems, but it's all good.
Yeah.
Yeah. When he said that, Todd, I hadn't felt the Spirit for a long time. And when he said that, I felt the Spirit, and I heard in my heart and mind, go home. You need to drop everything you're doing right now in Arizona and go home. And my dad got really emotional, so it became very real to me. It's almost like God was giving me an opportunity to come home and be around my dad again. And so I did. Wow. I decided, it was really easy for me to do because my life was crumbling in Arizona.
Yeah, you're like, I don't want, nothing to stay here for, really.
So I'm going to go back up to Utah. And in my brain, I'm like, okay, well, I'm going back to a very faithful LDS structured family. I'm gonna have to live with mom and dad for a while. I'm a 26-year-old man. I'm going to have to live with them for a while until I get back on my feet, whatever. I'd made some pretty good money in Arizona, but I'd wasted it all. So I'd take the Greyhound bus up to Utah to live. And I couldn't bring all my possessions because I couldn't afford to. Like I had squandered everything that I had. And I was thinking I could change my life to go live with mom and dad again, because I know I have to. But it wasn't like I want to.
Right.
I have to.
Yeah.
And I thought I could. Well, there's a problem. I was addicted, and I was addicted a lot more than I thought I was.
Right.
So I go and I'm living with my mom and dad. My dad only makes it 11 months, and he dies of brain cancer. And
I'm sorry to hear that.
Thank you. And through that time, I started working with a brother-in-law who was doing landscaping, and I've got my backpack, and I've got my alcohol in my backpack, and I try and find ways to get marijuana, and nobody knows that, and I think nobody knows that, and
Right.
when I can take a break into the wooded area or whatever, or use the restroom wherever, I take a drink or I smoke, and this thing becomes something that I feel like makes me better than I am, makes
Right.
me a better person, because Mike Gregson alone, without anything else, is an awful human being with no value, brings nothing to the table that does anything good for anybody. I literally believe that. And it got so dark for me. When my dad died, I was crushed. I mean, I literally was so broken that I was drinking at all times of the day.
Right.
I would try and bounce from job to job, but yet I'd try and drink. And I could only last about 2 weeks at a job, and I wouldn't even get fired. I because I was drinking on the job at breaks or whatever, I felt like, well, they're going to find out. It's going to catch up with me.
Right,
So
yeah.
I got to go. I got to run. That's the life of an addict. You're so afraid of everybody finding out and things catching up to you that you bounce around and you try and make it in your brain. You think, well, nobody knows because I'm fine. Like I'm better because of this thing, and they can't tell it on my breath or whatever. But there's always that fear, and fear just ruins everything,
Right.
or actually opens the door in that case when
Sure.
you're really bad.
Yeah. Right.
My dad died, and I had some experiences where I had to spend some time in jail, and I was in jail for about a month. And I'll tell you what, if there's not a reality check for you, that's a reality check for you.
Yeah.
But as soon as I got out of jail, what did I do? I went right back to alcohol, and I was broken. And so I got to the point where I was waking up every morning wanting to die, wishing that I was dead. I was working this job in Utah County, and I was on the phone, and as soon as I got off this phone call, I was done. Life was so dark. I hated myself so much. I tried to put God away to the point where I just didn't even have a thought
Right.
towards him or anything of light. I was done. I hung up the phone from work, and I stood up in the middle of my job, left, went home to my apartment that I was barely paying for. I walked into my apartment and literally was trying to figure out how I was going to kill myself. I hate me so bad.
Right.
My dad drew a picture on his mission of Jesus Christ. It's stifling, all dots, and it's beautiful. And I always, no matter what I was going through and no matter what lifestyle I was living, I always had that picture of Christ in my room. And I would look at it every once in a while to think of my dad, but I wouldn't really let the thoughts go much further than that. But this time when I walked in the room, is I'm literally trying to figure out how I'm going to end my life because I'm so sick of everything and what I'd done.
Right.
I grabbed this picture of Christ, I held it up, and I looked at it, and with all the anger in my soul, all the darkness in my soul, and just energy, I yelled and screamed at God for a solid half an hour. And every 4-letter word, every awful thing you can think came from my lips. And basically, I knew he was real. And I went to him and I said, you screwed up. This is on you. You created me. And look at where I'm at. Why would you do this to the child that you claim to love? I took no accountability, and I blamed him for everything. You're omniscient. Well, where are you? This is like everybody has a wonderful life except for me. Me.
Yeah.
I was broken to the point where exhausted all my energy, and I fell on my bed and I just wept. And I'm talking ugly cry, weeping, right?
Yeah,
like
for
just
sure.
just uncontrollable weeping, and I was broken. And I'm trying to figure out, am I gonna shoot myself? Am I gonna drink whatever? And as I'm laying there crushed, that feeling comes back again. Very clear, very real. Get on your knees and say a prayer. And when I finally recognized that
Right.
was coming through,
Yeah.
no. Why would I talk to you when I just got done yelling about how mad I am at you?
Yeah.
And it came again. Get on your knees and say a prayer. I rolled over off the bed, got on my knees. Had no idea what to say. It had been 4 years since I'd talked to Heavenly Father in a way where child the Father. Had no idea what to say. And all that could come out of my mouth at that point, so broken, was, help me. Help me. And as soon as I said help me, I just felt this rush wrap around me and into my heart and just bear hug me. And as broken as I was, as I had no belief that anything could happen for me that is good. Just broken, limited. All of a sudden, I knew that God loved me and that I had value to Him and there was nothing wrong with me. Wait, everything's wrong with me. How is that possible?
Right. Wow.
And that moment broke through my rock solid heart and pricked me to recognize that God loved me. He loved me. And that I could trust in.
Right.
I couldn't trust in anything else other than the sun to come up every morning.
Right.
But I could trust in that because I felt that with power. And I knew that He showed up for me. As soon as I reached my arm out to Him, He showed up for me.
Wow.
It didn't change my life, though. Addiction is crazy.
Right. You still have that to deal with.
No, it's crazy.
Right.
And you figure out, you don't have anything. I have no money. And we are all the same, right? When we get in these addictions, we have nothing to get with. But if we want to get our fix each day, we'll find a way. And we really, literally do. It's crazy.
Yeah. Yep.
And so I was still running to that addiction every day. But there was a difference. There was a girl that came into my life, my wife now, Alicia. And the first night we were together, although I drank, we had a conversation about God. And she saw through all the haze of the life that I created and somehow saw the good heart in me, humbly saying, I want to get back to my Heavenly Father because I know He lives. And she held on to that. And through all the lies and the craziness that I took her through for the next year, she held on to it. That brought love back into my life. All of a sudden, there's this person that no matter what, loved me and cared for me. It's like God knew we needed each other because I was helping her in certain ways too. We needed each other, and we helped each other. And I started to go back to church. That was huge for me.
Yeah.
But I was so ashamed. I was so shameful of everything that I created.
Like, I don't belong here.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the only thing, Todd, that kept me going is that pinprick of God loves you. So you got to try. You got to try. So I would show up. I started showing up to church, and I set up an appointment to go see my bishop. I went in to go see him, and obviously a bishop is a spiritual counselor who, if we can open up to, will help us overcome things to come back and connect with God again fully. And I went and sat down with him, looked across his desk, and I said, I'm good. Everything's fine. All is well. I couldn't deal with my shame yet. I couldn't deal with letting everybody else know how big of a mess I am. I couldn't forgive myself. And that is a very key thing, is that forgiving of myself. I wasn't worth the forgiveness of myself.
Right.
Although God loved me, I couldn't forgive myself. Yeah. It took a miracle for me. So I started to go back to church events and meetings. I went to a family evening. I was coming home. I just bought a scooter. That's all I could afford. And Alicia and I, my wife, who we were dating at the time, decided after the family meeting we were going to go get a movie and get stuff for milkshakes. We went to Hollywood Video. You know what that is back in the day. Yeah, so for you young kids, we used to actually have to go to a store and look around for a long time and pick a movie out and rent it. Anyway, we were coming home 8 p.m. at night. my church was 2 blocks away, so we took my scooter. We didn't wear helmets. First warm night of spring, we're coming home, going about 40, 45 miles an hour on this scooter, and a young gal was coming the opposite direction, made a turn way too early, probably didn't see the scooter, nailed us head on, going about 40 to 45, accelerating into a left-hand turn, going way too early. So I think she saw us, was trying to beat us, nailed us.
Yeah.
Alicia was scalped, broke her neck and back in 7 places.
Really?
Broke her femur, shattered her knee, shattered her foot, and was alert the whole time. I broke my skull in 3 places. I had traumatic brain injuries. My leg was kind of folded in half, and I was comatose at the scene. One of our heroes, Spencer Hall, was sitting at the intersection where we got hit. He got out of his car. He had just given a blessing to somebody, so he was dressed to the T. He had his white shirt on, his tie, was in a spiritual mindset already. He was on the phone with a doctor, his really good friend. Everything just kind of lined up for us. It's crazy. On the phone with the doctor, runs up to the scene. What do I do? What do I do? Doctor says, are any of them awake and alert? Because they're probably dead if they're not. And he looked at me. Spencer says he ran up. He looked at me and he thought, he's dead. So he went to Alicia, who was scalped and struggling and moving, and he put her scalp back together. Tried to stop the bleeding, held her in place, gave her a blessing. And all the ducks lined up for us. God never gives up on his children. God loves all of us. We all have value. We all have worth. That accident saved my life. The hardest thing that I've ever been through was the greatest blessing of my life. I spent some time in a coma. I had some pretty amazing experiences while I was in my coma with my father. And I knew that my father loved me and was proud of me, even though while he was dying, I was an alcoholic, and he knew that.
Right.
And as I came out of the coma, they didn't know if I was going to make it. They're telling my mom that he's probably not going to make it. His brain's barely active. And the blessing, Todd, is I don't know that I had much brain activity before the accident. So I think to my family, it's like, oh, hey, that's all good. That's normal.
Yeah, that sounds about normal. That sounds about right. Yeah.
That's right. So I came out of the coma, and I literally had no idea who I was. I thought I was the Wolverine. Hi, I'm the Wolverine. That's who I introduced myself to as a doctor. So I guess I said to God, hey, if you're going to send me back, can I just be the Wolverine?
Can I
Is
be
that
the Wolverine?
cool? Yeah.
That'd be great.
Yeah, but all of a sudden, things were different for me. I was softer when I was healing. And although the alcoholism is something I had to work very, very hard to overcome, the accident didn't heal me there. I knew that I was worth it. I knew that I was worth it to God, and that's all that mattered. And that I was worth it to Jesus Christ, and because he sent his son here, who went through everything for me, who walked that walk with me. I felt him walking that walk with me. In my darkest moments, he tried to knock on that door and let me know that he was there, and all I had to do was reach. That was all I needed.
Wow. So
I came home. I had to heal for a year. I was out of work for a year. I started going to LDS addiction recovery meetings. The first time I went, I sat there and I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't want to be here. This is awful. But I kept going because I knew that I was important enough to change myself and keep going. And I started to overcome this thing. And all of a sudden my mindset changed, and I understood that it wasn't this bottle of liquid that I was going to that was my problem. It was the pride within me. The pride within me to feel like Mike Gregson's not good enough. Pride sometimes can be a negative thing as well. Pride is when we focus only on me. When we're only focused on me, that's pride.
Yeah.
Even whether it's good or bad, focus, right? I started to connect with God. I started to study him, study his word, study the life of Jesus Christ and his teachings. And as I started to study him and I started to look to him, light came back into my life. I wanted to live a different life. All of a sudden, my life was now focused on serving others, helping others. As I started to go serve the homeless food at the homeless food shelter, broken, still recovering from my brain injury, I meet a group of people there that work for Marriott International. They tell me come work here. All of a sudden, as I've got all these legal things that I'm still dealing with in my life, it somehow feels like I can't get anywhere. I still have this belief in my mind. God's got my back. Somehow, he's going to help me pass this drug test. Somehow, he's going to help me make a life still.
Right.
But there's legal things and all these things that can that I can't escape. But I've got a belief that I can. And that belief opened doors for me. God opened doors for me as I believed, as I stayed positive, as I understood that I had value. Those doors started to open. 10, 11, 12 years later, looking back, I work for Marriott International still, and I've had a phenomenal career. Alicia and I got married, sealed in the temple. I've got 3 amazing children. She broke her neck and back in 7 places, and she was able to have 3 incredible kids.
Yeah, I was going to ask her how she recovered from all that.
Yeah.
But obviously she did, which is awesome.
And it's a struggle in the wintertime, holy cow. It hurts her big time, but
sure.
But we've been blessed, and God has been there to help us along every step of the way. And as we've made that decision, that choice to connect with him each day and look to him, it's not about me anymore. It's about what can I give back.
Wow.
And when I look at life like that and see people for the value that they have and not worry about me, but worry about others and how can I help and what can I do to serve someone today, there is so much light and so much joy that has come into my life through that. And I love life. I don't have much, Todd. I'm not a guy that's ever going to go after all that stuff. I don't really care about that stuff.
Doesn't matter anymore.
Amen. And it doesn't matter to me. That stuff never gives you happiness.
Yeah.
I love people. I care about souls. And I just want to lift and help and love. And I'm not perfect at that either, but I try every day, and God helps me, and he talks to me as I try.
Wow. What's the belief you have about yourself now?
I'm a child of God. My value, my worth to him will never change. There's nothing I can do that will ever allow me to escape that, and thank God for that, because I tried so hard. Knowing that about me, I understand that about everybody else.
Wow.
We're all children of God, of infinite value, and we are all going to make mistakes.
Yeah.
It's okay. It's okay. It's okay to make mistakes. That's why we are here. I love people in the middle of their mistakes. I love the sinner, right? We call it the sinner, the alcoholic, the smoker, the one living in infidelity or whatever. I love that person. And I don't care what you're doing. What you're doing does not define you. Your soul defines you. And I know your soul. And if you ever want to come to a higher place than where you're at right now, I know you can. And I want to help you. But I want to love you whether you want to be there or not, because I know that your value and your worth is there to God and to me.
Wow. Well said. And I can feel that love from you. I can feel that energy from you right now. And we were talking about this before we started, how lucky we are to sit face to face with the person sharing the story, you know, and I know it does translate as listeners hear this, but to be able to sit here with you and see this and feel your love and passion for God and for helping other people. I mean, I can feel it. It's amazing.
I hope so.
That is an incredible story. I it's just unbelievable. There's a million questions I want to ask you, but if there's someone listening to your story right now who's in a dark place, who's at rock bottom, or they feel they're going towards rock bottom, what would you tell them?
Hold on. And just give yourself 24 hours from that moment right now. Hold on. Because that rock bottom that you're in right now is going to end up becoming the thing that springboards you into the greatest victory in your life. And once you are there, because I promise you, if you hold on, it will happen.
Right. Once
you are there, you will be able to turn around and help people that are in the place that you're at right now. And that will give you more joy than anything else that this world can give you. But hold on. You're worth it. You're special. And you are learning. The point of this life is to learn. You are learning the most important things that you're ever going to learn. No school can teach you this. No career can teach you this.
You're right.
You are learning the hard knock things in life that will teach you the value of your human soul and your spirit to God. Hold on. Don't give up. Don't quit. Hold on. Because this darkness right now will help you to see the light in your life and will lead you to the greatest victory that you will ever have in your life. So hold on.
Wow. That's beautiful advice. Thank you so much. I know you do a podcast. It's called Come Towards Delight. How would people find that, and how would they find you if they wanted to reach out to you and ask you a question and to get to know more about you? What would be the best way for them to do that?
Well, first of all, I'd encourage you to go to Todd first because he's pretty awesome.
I don't know.
Just awesome podcast, Todd. I love what you do because what you do is love for other people. You want to do something good in the world to help others.
Right.
And likewise, right? I feel the same way. So Come Towards Delight, the idea of that podcast and that title is we have to go through the dark before we come to delight. So what's that story? What's that journey to get there? And I want to give people a safe place to share so that others can hear that this delightful person who's awesome and has energy and is happy, this is what they went through to get there.
Right.
And it's not just because they wanted it and so they have it, right?
Yeah.
They practiced it. No, it's because a lot of times you pass through the dark.
Yeah.
So if you ever want to find it, it's on all the major podcast channels, whether it's Apple, Google, Breaker, whatever it is, you can find it. Just search Come Towards Delight, or you can go to the Instagram page at Come Towards Delight. If you ever want to reach out to me, please send me an email at cometowardsdelight@gmail.com. I'm always looking for people with uplifting stories to share their journeys on my podcast. Sure. And Todd, I'm going to put you on mine as well because I want to hear all about you. But
awesome.
But yeah, I mean that's what it is. You try and give back.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I challenge all our listeners to reach out to you and share their stories and whatever, or if they know someone who's struggling, they can maybe guide them towards you and to listen to the amazing stories that you're featuring on your podcast. But I can't thank you enough for being vulnerable today and sharing your story with us. I needed to hear that today, honestly. Like, I sit here and go, and I know the listeners are going, wow, what an amazing story. I needed to hear that. But, you spoke to my heart today, and I want to thank you so much for, not giving up and holding on, not giving up and making it through this really difficult time. But look at now, just where you said it, the hardest thing you ever went through was the greatest thing you've ever went through. There's an amazing statement that I love. The greater the darkness, the greater the light. Right?
Amen to that.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, and that's your story.
Yes.
That is totally your story. And but thank you for taking the time to share this with us. And I wish we had a few more hours. We could just sit and talk more and more, right?
You've got other people to talk to, so no worries. It's good.
No, you're awesome.
It's good.
Well, there you go, folks. I told you, Mike's story was going to be amazing, and it is. And I hope that you guys felt what I'm feeling right now, and that you will take this into your heart and hold on if you're struggling with anything. And if you know anyone else who's struggling, please share this with them, because this will uplift them. This will maybe get them through that dark time to help them hold on. Share this with them. And again, thank you for my sponsor, Veracity Networks, and Paul Cardall. Thank you for the music. We all love you. And Mike, we love you too. Thank you for doing this today.
Love you, Todd. You're awesome.
Thank you. Now, well, guys, until next time, and I love all of you.